As you guys know from the giant image that's there on your screen right now and from the sign up page where you guys signed up for this webinar, in today's webinar, we're going to be taking a look at how you can integrate GIPHY and all its awesome GIFs into your TARS chatbot. Now, for people who aren't fully aware, GIPHY is essentially a library of GIFs. They aggregate GIFs from all over the web. They're pretty much used in all of the big chat platforms. If you search for a GIF, on Gboard, if you search for a GIF in Messenger, if you search for a GIF in WhatsApp, actually, I don't know if you can search for a GIF in WhatsApp.
You can.
If you search for a GIF in, oh, you can? Okay. If you search for a GIF pretty much anywhere, they're probably using GIPHY's library. So we're going to be showing you how you can integrate that library into your TARS chatbot to dynamically pull their content into your lead generation flows. But as always, we like to begin our webinars with an introduction, just so that the newer attendees have a sense of who we are and where our information is coming from, and so that we don't look like two disembodied heads floating on your screen telling you what to do in your marketing campaigns. Now, I know the older attendees will probably be used to me giving this intro, and they might be bored of it. So instead today, why don't we have Vineet give the intro for us?
Sure. So as company TARS help marketers to increase the conversion rate through use of conversation landing page using chatbots. So if you think about marketers, the job of marketer is to bring traffic to the website and convert that traffic, those visitors, into leads. And the primary way people do that, basically marketers do that, is by making a landing page and putting a form on top of it and running an ad campaign or an organic campaign on top of that landing page. Now, the problem with that approach is that those forms nobody likes to fill out those forms. It doesn't matter if it's a big form or a short form, nobody likes to fill it out. In fact, the industry average of filling out those forms is around 3 to 4% conversion rate. So what we say is that replace this form. In fact, you replace the whole landing page with the chatbot, and the whole experience is just chatbot. So basically, if then the user comes on your page, the chatbot initiates the conversation with the user. It is much more interactive, it's much more focused on the conversation, and it is high. It basically takes the user from the from a very informational or from a very small initial interaction to a end conversion. And in the way it basically collects all the necessary information that you require, basically email or phone number, and turn into a lead. So that is the purpose of using the chatbot, and in the way it does it, it basically improves the conversion rate on the campaign. So basically, what we've seen is that if you use the chatbot landing page instead of a normal form, you will get a boost of 2 to 3x improvement into conversion rate, and that's the value proposition of the product.
Within that broader story, you guys have probably heard this several times before, but I'm a conversational designer and a marketer. My name is Arnav. I've been around for around 4 years. And essentially what I do is I help companies build chatbots for their marketing use cases. And I help make content, primarily I help make content like this webinar to help other marketers learn more about chatbots and generally just get immersed into the chatbot space. In that time, I've built over 100 chatbots. It's a little bit of a bragging right. A lot of those chatbots have worked. A lot of them haven't. And honestly, it's those chatbots that haven't worked that really go into, it's those experiences that really go into making these webinars. And it's those learnings that we're trying to pass along to you guys.
Yeah. So for me, so I'm the co-founder and CTO of the company name called TARS, and we have been working on this product for almost 5 years now. And initially, the product was built by just me in the very early stages. And when we were building this product, the main thing that we had in mind while building it was that it should not be one single system which is going to work alone or in silo. It should be a system which will connect to any other services out there, and it should integrate really well with all the existing applications, all the existing solutions that are already there. So we didn't want to build something which people have already built. We wanted to build something new and which can connect to all the other resources that already exist.
And with those intros out of the way, we are ready for the important stuff. Now, I think a good starting point is to, first of all, define what a GIPHY chatbot is. So we're integrating GIPHY into your chatbot. So what does that look like? What does that mean? And essentially what it is we are tapping into, as I mentioned earlier, we're tapping into GIPHY's massive GIF library. And we're using that library to dynamically pull GIFs into our conversational landing pages, into our chatbots, to um, make our lead generation flows more engaging. Like what Vineet was just saying, when we were thinking about how to, well, when Vineet was thinking about how to build the platform out, uh, we didn't want it to be a siloed system. We want you to be able to have the functionality of all of these other awesome services that exist on the web, and GIPHY happens to be one of them. It happens to be one that's close to our heart. And essentially what it does is it lets you use the power of GIPHY and their content in your chatbot. We've actually built a GIPHY chatbot for demo purposes before this webinar, so we can actually show you what that looks like, just so that you guys have a sense of what we are talking about when we say GIPHY chatbot as we're going forward. So over here, I have opened up the GIPHY search bot in the chatbot templates section of the TARS website. Shameless plug, if you guys haven't used the chatbot templates section before, you guys should definitely check it out. We have hundreds of chatbot templates that you can use and duplicate and use as a starting point for your chatbot creation process. Over here, we have a GIPHY chatbot. It asks us for a search term, which we want to look up. So I'm going to look up something like cat, and then it's going to take that search term, it's going to query GIPHY, and it's going to send me a bunch of GIFs of cats. Now, if I want to do another search and I look up dogs, it's going to do the exact same thing. It's going to pull images of dogs. Now, I can type in whatever I want over here, and since this chatbot is hooked up to GIPHY, it is not constrained by the number of GIFs that the creator has put into the TARS chatbot builder, because it has access to all of the millions of GIFs that exist on the GIPHY platform. Now, I realize that some people over here might not be completely aware about what GIPHY is. So before we continue with the actual webinar, I figured I'd give you guys a sneak peek at what GIPHY is as well. If you've ever read our newsletters, we use a lot of GIFs in them. We're also trying to use more GIFs in our blog posts as well, in our regular blog posts. And essentially, what GIPHY is a giant repository of GIFs that people collect. The GIFs tend to be on the funnier side, as you can see over here. And they make a great addition to any piece of content that you are creating to make it feel a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more humorous, which we found to work as a marketing tactic, by the way. Now, shifting back to the actual webinar and the actual session at hand. Let me just see if we can get back into full screen mode. For some reason, Google Slides in particular is very picky when you are on a Zoom webinar. It refuses to open up the presentation, but once you're in, it's all right. Okay, so with that out of the way, we have to discuss what an API is. So as Vineet was saying, we didn't want the system to be siloed. We wanted it to be able to connect to other services. And the way you do that in the TARS builder is through the API integration feature. And you can't really understand how to use the API integration feature to create, for example, a GIPHY chatbot if you don't know what an API is in the first place. Now, while we were preparing the slides for this webinar, we did a Google search for API, clicked on the first link, it was a Wikipedia page, and pulled the first paragraph into our slides. But if you're reading the text that's on your screen right now, you'll realize that it's kind of boring. It's a super formal definition that requires a little bit of thinking to figure out. And most people who just don't want to get into this might not understand what it is. So for the purposes of this webinar, we are going to use a much easier definition, a much easier working definition that will that'll essentially convey the exact same information to you guys, so that you guys understand what the basic functionality of an API is, and then we'll move forward from there. So the definition that I came up with with input from Vineet was essentially you can think about an API as a magical software tool that lets different apps communicate with each other. Um, so in the case of this webinar, for example, we are having GIPHY communicate with your TARS chatbot. The TARS chatbot is pulling information from GIPHY into your lead generation flow to display GIFs. Uh, Vineet, you are a web developer. I am not. Do you have anything else that might be helpful for the viewers in terms of understanding what an API is?
Yeah, so I think this word is thrown around a lot, especially now, and so it can be very confusing sometimes that what exactly people mean, because in different contexts it can mean different things. But what you have to understand is API is essentially a way to communicate between applications. So if you think about the current application infrastructure or ecosystem around you, you must be using a lot of applications within your organization, like Gmail or Mailchimp or HubSpot, and each of them have does very specific thing as part of your organization. So, for example, HubSpot is a customer relationship management system. Mailchimp is a email marketing software. Gmail is your basically email system, right? So each of these softwares does something very functional, and it is completely independent of each other. And API is the only way through which they can communicate between each other. So I think it's a very good way to think about it. API is a way or a language through which we are basically talking, two software systems talk to each other. So in this case, when you're talking about API integration in the context of task chatbot, we are basically talking about that you can actually, your task chatbot can actually communicate and talk to any other application or any other services out there in a very seamless and in a very structured format. So in this case, for example, with the GIPHY system, so GIPHY is again another cloud-based solution which has a database of a huge amount of GIFs, and in that database you can do a lot of things. You can search on that. Uh, you can search on that database. You can what are the trending GIFs. You can do a bunch of things. And so basically, in this particular webinar, we are going to see how we can use the search feature of the GIPHY application and integrate it to our chatbot through over API.
Generally speaking, picking up from where Vineet left off, APIs can be split into essentially two types. There are fetch APIs and there are submit APIs. Now, these aren't technical terms that are used in the API development or web development community, as I understand it, correct, Vineet?
Yeah, so when you think about, as I mentioned, that API is a way to communicate between applications, right? And when you think about communication, it can be one of the two ways. Either you are asking for information for somebody, or you are telling something to somebody, right? So fetch and submit is basically equivalent of those two actions. So fetch is like when basically you are fetching data from a service. So in this case, in the case of GIPHY, you are basically making a search query to the GIPHY system, and GIPHY is returning back with an API response, which has all the relevant GIFs, maybe top 3 or top 10 GIFs according to the search query that you have made. So that is a for fetch kind of an API.
Right.
In the
So
submit,
when we did a search for cat earlier in the Jiffy chatbot,
yeah.
it was fetching those cat GIFs from the Jiffy library.
Right, and we are not actually saving anything back to the GIPHY system. We are just reading information from the GIPHY service. So similarly, you have the submit API feature. Basically, this is used when you are actually want to push data, or when you want to write some data onto the target system. So, for example, in the case of Salesforce, uh, the lead that you're capturing through your chatbot, basically the information about the user like name, email, and phone number or company name, all that information you might want to push that information onto your Salesforce system as a new contact entry, so that so in that once those data is coming is in your Salesforce database, you can do a bunch of things. You can manage them, you can follow up with them, you can run email marketing sequences on top of it. You can do a bunch of things. So that is the part where Salesforce comes in. But the part about capturing the lead is something taken care of by the task chatbot. And the way these two systems, which are completely independent of each other, and they don't even know how to, they don't even, they are basically completely built in complete different times. Now they can communicate over each other with each other over this API interface. So API is again a way to communicate between two software systems, and in this case, You are basically pushing the data. We are basically submitting the data from TARS chatbot to the Salesforce system. So that is a submit kind of API service.
So now the natural next question to this is why would we want to make such an integration? Vineet's already alluded to it, and if you hadn't figured it out from our examples, these sorts of integrations between apps can be super useful for your marketing campaigns. Um, Generally, when people make software, when we make software as well, we don't want it to be siloed, but at the same time, in 2020, a lot of software is highly specialized. TARS, for example, is highly specialized at delivering delivering the best possible conversational lead generation experiences for your marketing campaigns. HubSpot is highly optimized, highly specialized for lead management. Um, Now, all of those services are super specialized with in and of themselves, but your marketing campaigns aren't. Your marketing campaigns make use of all of these services together, and you need to stitch them together to create a cohesive experience that makes it, one, easy for your customers to interact with your marketing stack, and two, make it easier for you to interact with your marketing stack so that you are performing at maximum efficiency, which in turn, again, transfers over to your customers because if you are taking more time to get things done in your marketing stack, in your marketing processes, then that means you are in less contact with the customer. You're having fewer interactions with them. And that proves to give you a worse customer service. Now, we know that this sort of stuff can sound super abstract. So we actually prepared an example to explain to you guys exactly what we mean by this. So take the example of TARS and HubSpot. Say you're capturing leads through a conversational landing page on TARS or a chatbot on TARS, and you manage your leads using HubSpot. Now, the question arises as to how you are going to transfer data between the two of them. So all of these emails and names are being generated within TARS, and you need to get those names and emails all the way over to HubSpot. So how are you going to go about doing that? One option is to do it manually. So you jump into your TARS console, you jump into the email notifications that you get from TARS, and you manually create contacts in HubSpot that go with each of those submissions. Now, feasibly, that is not going to work because it's a waste of time. You have better things to do. You have more important things to do that require the actual skills that you've picked up over the years of doing digital marketing. And you really don't need to fill up your day with hours of data entry. So instead,
And
what we'd
and you can
use.
make a lot of mistakes if you do it manually.
That's true. That is also true. You can make a lot of mistakes if you are doing it manually. Human error is a real issue in data entry, and you want to avoid that. Because say you insert someone's name incorrectly and then you send out a follow-up email to them where you automatically pull their name from their HubSpot account. If you misspell their name, that's an automatic red flag for your prospects, and they might not convert because of that. You want to avoid situations like that. So instead of doing it manually, essentially what you do is you use some of that API magic that I was talking about earlier, to move the data automatically from your TARS account to HubSpot. And in fact, the funny thing is you guys actually interacted, whether you realize it or not, you guys interacted with an API when you signed up for this webinar. So the chatbot that you use to sign up for our webinars on our webinar landing pages is hooked up, albeit through Zapier, which does use APIs, to our HubSpot account. So every time you guys submit your email and your name, you get automatically transferred over to our HubSpot account into a webinar email list where we can then send you follow-up emails, we can send you reminder emails, and we can send you the recording, which, by the way, will be coming out at the end of this week. So that's just one example of how APIs can make your life easier in terms of improving the efficiency of your marketing flow and achieving more with less, essentially. Um, so at this point, we wanted to ask you guys, what services do you guys use? Because we've been talking about a lot of examples that we thought might be applicable to a general audience. But we figured to get your guys' juices flowing about how you can use the API integration feature, we could open up the floor to you guys. If you guys can drop into the chat or into the Q&A what sorts of services you guys use, we can give you some ideas about how you can hook up those services to your TARS chatbot to create to create a cohesive experience for you and your customers. So, for example, one that we came up with yesterday, just to give you guys another example, if you're working in the real estate space, you want to get onto you want to follow up with your leads as soon as possible. You can hook up your TARS chatbot, so every time a lead is captured, you get a text on your phone with all of their information. You can hit their phone number and call them immediately. So we'd love to hear from you guys. Are there any services that you guys are using that we
So
can give?
that's an example. So that's an example of where you're connecting the SMS or telephony system to your task chatbot and basically making it work, making getting a notification on your text for that, right? So when you're even thinking about these services, you can actually think about any of the SaaS applications or any tools that you use internally in your organization, and you can actually think about you don't actually have to think about which APIs, whether they have the APIs or not. You can drop in what all applications you use as part of your organization or your company, and we can actually help you guys integrate your task chatbot with that service if that makes the process easier.
Right. Okay, so we have one question over here from mortgage broking. What sorts of integrations can you make? I mean, the obvious one that comes to my mind is using your chatbot with your CRM, just like we've been talking about with HubSpot and Salesforce. If you're using a Mortgage IQ, um, any of the awesome mortgage CRMs that are out there. I recently wrote a post about mortgage CRMs, so they're fresh in my mind. Um, you could hook up your chatbot to your mortgage CRM so that those leads go in there automatically. They get automatically categorized into your various lists, and they get put into your drip campaigns. Vineet, any other ideas for mortgage broking? What sorts of
I think other than so CRM is for when you're managing your customers. Maybe you can use if you are managing any newsletters for your prospects. You can actually transfer the lead captured by the chatbot to your newsletter sending software. Like generally we use Review. You can use something like that. Maybe an email marketing software. I think there can be a lot of use cases
right,
for that.
right,
One more use case I can actually think about for mortgage industry is if so there's an API where you can actually see the rates of the loan, the interest rates, the very recent or dynamic interest rate on loan rates. So you can actually hook up your chatbot with those API to show your prospects or the users real time update or real time calculation of what interest rate applies to them based on their salary or based on their credits, all those things. There is an
right,
API for calculating your financial, basically the score, basically your basically FICO score or something. You can actually do those kind of calculations. You can actually make some really interesting chatbots just for the like it can be used as a lead magnet for even generating more leads.
right. So we actually got that suggestion in the Q&A, making a mortgage calculator based for the
Yeah.
MarTech space using a chatbot. That's definitely something you can do. We've seen people use chatbots pretty effectively to make fee calculators. Funnily enough, if you guys have ever seen content by our colleague Levi, he built a really cool calculator for the DMV in Montana to calculate your fees for getting a new license. Similar tech, similar APIs, um, basic math functionality through Math.js. Some more complex APIs, maybe like Vineet was saying for mortgage in particular, can be used to create a similar calculator for the mortgage space. And that pretty much applies to any other industry as well, where you can uh, where you need to make calculations of fees. We have another submission over here, real estate CRM like Yardi. Yep, CRMs are sort of a sweet spot. I think CRMs are, because their whole purpose is structuring data, and because all of the lead data that you capture through TARS is very structured, the API integration with CRMs is actually quite easy. If you're using a service like Zapier, or if you're using the direct API that's been exposed by the CRM, um, it's
You can
definitely
also you
a
can
use
also
we recommend.
yeah, one thing you can also do is you can actually submit the data to your Google Sheet Like this, like Google Sheet is like the most basic form of any kind of data storage or anything, any kind of database management. So you can actually move data from the TARS chatbot to Google Sheet.
Oh, now they are rolling in. Okay, so we have another. Actually, we have two suggestions for this. Zillow API for real estate. Um, to return real estate marketing data such as market data such as estimated value. That actually sounds like a very cool use case. We've been thinking a lot about real estate, or at least I have been thinking a lot about real estate in the past couple of days. Real estate, pulling data from Zillow is definitely a compelling use case, and it is definitely possible within a TARS chatbot. I imagine you could hook up your chatbot to the Zillow API using the API integration feature, and then you could create something like a house finding assistant. So essentially, you ask the user a bunch of questions. You could think about it almost like a quiz of sorts. We've done a webinar before on quiz administration through chatbots. You could even frame it that way. You could ask customers, you could use this as a customer engagement tool. You could ask customers to share information about what sorts of houses they like through a BuzzFeed style quiz administered through a chatbot. And then based on that, on those preferences, you can query the Zillow API and fetch, like what Vineet was saying, you can fetch all of the houses that match those preferences in that person's particular area and display it to them in an engaging way in the chatbot. I'll say that the added advantage of that over doing just a regular search on Zillow might be that it transforms the experience from, oh, I as a prospect, I as a home buyer am going to look for these houses myself, to here I have this virtual assistant that is helping me find these houses for me. So that would be a super compelling use case. And whoever's bringing it up right now, we have two people. You guys should attend our webinar on Friday, where we will be talking about new features coming up to TARS, and you guys will have the opportunity to discuss what integrations you want to see added, and definitely bring that up because we will take that into consideration. I'm sure Vineet will when we're building features out this spring. So with that, I think we're actually ready to move on to the live build section of the webinar. If you guys have any more suggestions of what sorts of features or what sorts of services you guys use, and if you want ideas about it, drop it in the Q&A section. We will get to it after the live build. We usually have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar as well. But we're ready to go on to the live build section of the webinar. Let me switch over to let me hand over control to Vineet. This is really his area of expertise. I do know how to use the API integration feature, but let me hand it over to Vineet.
Cool. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we can see your
All
screen.
right. All right. So basically, what we are going to do is we are going to pick the GIPHY chatbot template directly from the chatbot template section in the task website, and we are going to just edit that. So let's just start with that. If you search for GIPHY chatbot hello task, the first result that you'll find is the one for the template section. So this is the one that Arnav has shown you at the beginning of the webinar. And if you see, there is an option called use this template now. So you can actually use this, click on this button, and this will take you to your dashboard, where it will actually show the same preview that you saw on the website inside the dashboard. And then you can click on this, use this template button. And right now it is cloning this chatbot into my account.
So that's how you create a Jiffy chatbot, guys. You don't have to use the API integration feature. Just go to our chatbot templates and duplicate it, and you're all set.
Yes, you're all set. Actually, you can see it here. If you publish this chatbot and you click on this live landing page, this is actually working. Yep. All right. So I'll go back to the dashboard. And so as you can see here, this is a very simple looking chatbot. It has only two gambits. The first gambit is a very, it's not even an API integration, it's just a very plain gambit, simple gambit. It is actually putting in all the messages that you want to show, like do you like GIFs, or you can actually put in your own branding messages as well. And basically we are asking for the user for a text input. And this is a custom text, so we are keeping it open. They can type in anything, and this is the text that the user will type to search for the GIF. So this is a very simple gambit. And what I'm going to do, let me disconnect this gambit and create a new one so that I can show you how to do this configuration, which is here in the new gambit. So I've created a new gambit here. I'll connect it here. And if you open this, you will see in this top down menu, there's an option called API config. Now, if you select that, you will find this new section has come up, and this is the API configuration a section where you want to basically configure this. Now, in order to do this, what you have to do is you actually have to look for the API endpoints that is needed to put in, right? So right now we're doing making GIPHY bot. So I'll go and search for GIPHY API. So this is usually how you look for or search for any API. So if you want to search for HubSpot APIs, you just search for HubSpot API, Salesforce API, or MailChimp API, and similarly you'll get the page for that. Now within this, if I go inside docs and go into API endpoints, you will find so we'll actually get to the point where uh, basically the page that has all the information we need to do this integration. Now this might look like a bit technical stuff, and to be honest, it is a bit technical, but I'll show you how to do things very easily. So if you see these endpoints, you can think of an API endpoint as a very specific service or a very specific skill within the whole suite of API for a service. So for example, GIPHY as a system is essentially a database of GIFs. So it has a lot of possible services or possible skills. So search endpoint is what we are interested in. But other than search, you can see here there's a trending endpoint, there's a translate endpoint, there's a bunch of other services that GIPHY system offers. Trending API endpoint probably just gives you the trending API, trending GIFs for a given time, right? So since we are interested in search endpoints, so we are going to be focused on this. And each endpoint has a endpoint API endpoint URL. So this is the one that we are interested in. So I will just copy this and go back to my dashboard here. Let me close this. And in this dashboard, this is where you're seeing, like, the API endpoint URL. So this is where you want to type this thing. And I usually put the HTTPS prefix also. And in this particular documentation, they have not mentioned that it is a get API. So every single API endpoint usually has a method called a get or a post. So you can actually select that method. As you can see, there's, other than get and post, you have few other methods, but mostly we'll basically use get and post. So it's very in general, get is used when you want to fetch the information, the way that we discussed about the fetch and submit method, or two kinds of APIs. Get is usually used when you have when you're fetching some data from the system, and post is used when you're posting some data or when you're submitting some data. So in this case,
basically get would be you want to get GIFs, you want to fetch GIFs from GIPHY,
yeah.
so you use a get request. You want to submit lead data to Salesforce or HubSpot, so you use a post request for that. Is that correct?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So in this case, since it's a fetch thing, so we'll just use get method here, and we have the endpoint URL here. Now, if you go back to this endpoint, you can see there are these request parameters and description here, and only two of these parameters are required. So one is the API key, and the other is Q, which is the query parameter. All the other stuff is not required, so I'll just skip that. So API key is where how the GIPHY system actually understands, okay, this is a legitimate or authenticated request, and it will serve it. Otherwise, it will just ignore request. So I'll just copy this,
So you can
and
think
then
of, I think you can think of these parameters as essentially data that you are sending along with your request um, to tell GIPHY exactly what you are looking for. So we're telling GIPHY through the endpoint that we want to search their database. But now while we're searching their database, we need to give them our search terms. If we want to look up cats, we have to tell them we want to look up cats. And that's what the query parameter does. And what the API key parameter does is it essentially like verifies like, hey, I'm a legit person that's trying to search your database. I'm not a bot, or in this case, it is a chatbot, but I'm not a troll that's trying to break your website and make unlimited queries or use it for some nefarious purposes. I don't know what nefarious purposes you could use GIPHY for, but you could. And that's essentially the data we are sending right now to GIPHY to specify our search query.
yeah, and the API key is also another way that how GP knows, okay, which user is making how many requests, so that they can put some limitations, or they can ask you to upgrade to different plans, those kind of stuff. So basically, API key is how GP identifies you as well. That okay, you are, this particular app is making the requests.
So
So I'll
basically,
just take,
GIPHY is the way the API key is the way they make money.
yeah, yeah, that is one of the ways. All right, so I'll just put this API key, this parameter request parameter label in the key value here, key field here, and I'll come to the value of this. And similarly, I have to put a Q parameter, which will tell the system, okay, what is the parameter, what I'm actually searching for. So the value for here would be something like cat or dog or whatever you want to search for, right? So I'll come back to this as well. So this field I need to fill. So you can actually get your API key if you go and sign in to your GIPHY account. And if you go to dashboard, you can actually find an API key here. So I already made a couple of apps already, but uh, probably if you make a new account, you'll have to create a new app. So you can do that by clicking here, create an app. You can call it, let me call it webinar 2. This is a test app. And here I want to use only, I only want to use the GPA API. So I'll just check this, create a new app. And now I got this API key. Now I can just copy this and paste it here.
Correct
And
me if
we
I'm
have,
wrong, Vineet, but API keys generally look like this ungodly
yes,
jumble of letters and numbers, right?
yeah, you don't want this string to be easily guessable. Like you don't want people to just guess some string, and it should be secure. So that's why they actually want to put it like this. Yes. So I think with this we have everything we need to set this thing. So I'll just click on send button here.
So essentially what we've done now is we've told GIPHY that we want to do a search on their database. We want to fetch the data from that search. And the query we want to search for is cat. And through the API key, we've told them who we are. So now they know that Vineet, because he's logged into his account and created this key, Vineet is searching for cats on their API.
Yes, and as you can see, we got this API response, and it is huge. There's a lot of data here, so you don't have to get scared by this. We are not going to read everything here. What is going on? We are going to bit deeper into it, because since this is a live build, so we are going to understand how we are going to refer to the right value. So basically, this is something called a JSON value, JSON data, and it has a particular structure to it. And I'll show you how you can refer to. Uh, so basically, in this data itself, you have all the URL of all the top 10 GIFs that has come as a result of this query, right? As you can see, it has type, it has slug values. I can actually zoom in my screen. So it has a bunch of things. So let me just take this whole data and paste it here. And I'm going to show you what exactly is the structure here. So you can see this data value is what is called an array of objects, or array of data. And each of these entries that you're seeing that I'm actually collapsing one at a time, each of these entry represents one GIF result. And within this one entry, you can see there's a bunch of information. All of this information belongs to one single GIF. And within this, uh, each of these entry, there's one property called images. And within this property, you have the URLs of all the GIFs in different formats. So this is a downsized large, this is fixed height, original. So we can actually see there's a different format for one single GIF, but all of them represent one GIF only. So we are going, for this demo purpose, we are actually going to use the fixed height value. So this basically the structure is you have the data at the top, which is an array, which is basically a list of GIFs. And inside each of those, there's this structure, and inside this, there's an images property, and inside that, we have fixed height, and then this is the URL that we are looking for. So if I copy this URL and open a new tab, so this is the GIF, the URL of the GIF, right? So what we want to do in the live build, we are going to open this and we are going to click on, so let me first remove this text, and we're going to click on this add an image option. And here we can actually specify the reference of this URL that we got from the API, right? So before that, let me just save this because I've done this configuration. I want to just save it before it goes away. And one thing I want to do is I want to copy this name of this gambit and I want to paste it here. The reason I'll tell you the reason that what I've done that, but let me just save it as it is. Now, if you want to, so this is the data that is coming for this API. Now, if you want to refer to this data on this gambit, what you need to do is, I think a lot of you guys would know there's a if you want to refer to the user's response on a particular gambit, on a previous gambit, you essentially use something like URSP dot the name of the gambit. So in this case, if you want to look for uh, you want to basically reference the user's response on this gambit, you would do URSP dot the name of the thing, right? So name of the gambit. So actually, this is the value you want to use it here because you don't want this value to be a static value. You want this value to be the user's response on the previous gambit, which are the same name as this. So whenever whatever users types in, this value gets updated accordingly.
Right.
Now,
So in the example we showed you before, the created one, um, if a user types in dog, the search parameter that we are going to send to GIPHY is going to be dog. If they type in facepalm, it's going to send facepalm to the GIPHY API to make that search. And then the response is going to be according to that search API. So over here, we typed in cat and we hit send. So we have a whole bunch of GIFs of cats sent back to us. Since we have it set up
yes,
now where it references the user's response in the previous gambit, whatever the user types in, GIPHY is going to return. Since we're sending that to GIPHY and we're saying fetch all of the GIFs that relate to this search query, GIPHY is going to pull the top GIFs that relate to whatever the user typed out.
yeah. So similar to the URSP thing, which is basically refers to the user's response on that gambit, we have another scope called pre dot gambit name. So in this case, gambit name is GIF underscore search underscore query, and this is the value. You can see pre dot GIF search query. Now
The way
what
I like to
this,
think about the pre is URSP refers to the user response, and pre refers to the part of the gambit that comes before or
yeah.
pre to the messages. So over here, you can see the API config is sort of above the messages. It's before the messages. So we are referring to that entire area before the messages.
Yeah, so basically this whole thing will get replaced by the API response. So the thing that you're seeing here, this whole data value, pre.gif search query, this whole thing will get replaced by this whole value. So obviously we don't want that. We want to refer to a very specific value or very specific URL within this structure. So what we are going to do is, I'll go back to here. Now, basically, what we want to do is similar to the dot structure that you already know. We are going to drill down on the URL that we want to refer to, which in this case is images inside images, which is actually inside the data value, which is an array, and inside one of those objects, it will go inside images, and inside images, it will go to fixed height value here, and then URL. So for that, what we're going to do is, after the search query or the gambit name, we'll put a dot here and put data. So right now we were here, and while putting the dot data here, we actually came in here. So dot data, and now this data is actually in array here. So we are going to just put a square bracket and a 0 here, which will refer to the first element, which is this. And inside that, I'll go. So inside that, you want to refer to this images. So again, I'll put a dot here and images. And then inside images, we want to refer to fixed height here. And inside, so I'll just put dot fixed height and then dot URL. This is the final thing. So finally, dot URL. I know this might look a bit confusing or intimidating, but like this is the way to actually right now to refer to this any kind of structure. So the power. So this might look a bit tricky or intimidating to work with, but this you also have to think about, like, this is actually a very powerful feature, and what this will allow you to actually refer to any complex interface with any complex data that is coming from the API, and drill down to a very specific data point that you want to refer to. So in
And
this
really
case,
quick,
we are referring. Yeah.
sorry, real quick before we move on the reason we have the square brackets and the 0 over there is because when you're looking at a list of elements in an API response, you have to specify which index in the list you want to look at, so which element within the list you want to look at. And 0, usually those indexes, those numbers start at 0. So 0 indicates the first element, 1 indicates the second element, 2 indicates the third element. Over here, by putting 0, we're saying, okay, look at pre.gif search query. So look at that entire response. Look at the data array over there. And then within the data array, the square bracket 0 indicates look at the first element.
This one. Yeah. Yeah, so this structure and this dot notation, it might look a bit tricky or a bit difficult to work with, but it actually it has a lot of power because it can actually allow you to drill down on a very complex data structure and refer to the things that you actually want to use. Um, so and you can actually use this in multiple other places. So what I'll do, I'll just save this gambit for now. Let me zoom out. And one thing I'm going to do, which is people might not know about it. So I'll pick this the output socket from this gambit, and I'll connect it back to itself. Now this is where I want to tell you why I have actually named this gambit same as the previous gambit. So what is happening here is, once the user comes on the first gambit, the user will respond, the bot will show these messages, and user will respond to this gambit. Let's say they type in cat, and the ursp.gif search query will be updated with that value. Now, once it reaches to next gambit, this value will be replaced by whatever the user has responded, and it will make an API call. It will get the API response. This reference will actually pick that first GIF from the API response, and then show it to the user, and then again wait for the user to give another response. Now, at this point, when the user types dog or something else, since the name of this gambit is exactly the same as the previous one, it will go back, since this gambit is connected to itself. As soon as the user types in that second message, so second query, it will actually go back to the beginning of this gambit, because this gambit is connected to itself, and make yet another API call. But this time, this value will be updated by the newest search query that the user has given. So this is a very, very, like a very easy trick to actually don't have to actually make multiple gambits for this thing to work. We actually can actually connect this to the same gambit in a loop, and this basically keeps on running. So the second time when the user types in, it will make another call, but this time the value is being updated. It will show the result based on the second query, and the cycle continues. So if I just save this gambit as it is and publish this chatbot, let's see if it works. Let's say animal. It works. Now you can see there's only one GIF here, and if I type in something else, it's showing me another value. So each search query is actually giving me the GIPHY response to that gambit for that search query. Now, if I want to show, let's say 2 or 3 GIFs, what I have to do, I just have to add another gambit here, or in the bubble here, add the image. I just copy this whole thing, paste it here, and change this 0th value to 1. So as Anna was saying, that now it is going to refer to the second entry on the results, and the rest of the structure is still the same, so I don't have to worry about any of those things. Similarly, I can actually add a third one here and change this 0 to 2. Now if I save this, publish, refresh, let's see. Anna, what do you want me to search?
Let's look up. Okay. What do I have in my mug? Let's look up fish. Okay, I was gonna say fish, but water works too.
Whatever's nearby.
So I know that we said that the main purpose of this webinar was to just teach you guys more about the API integration feature, and the GIPHY API was the way we were going to do that. But I will say the GIPHY API is super fun. I find that people respond really well to humor and to GIFs in your marketing content, even if you're selling a super serious product. In fact, if you are selling a super serious product, they'll probably appreciate it even more. We sell conversion rate optimization tools to other businesses, which honestly, we are super interested in it, but it's kind of boring. And we use a lot of GIFs in our content to make it seem more fun. And the GIPHY API is a great way to dynamically pull GIFs into your chat flows. So for example, in some of the lead generation flows I create in my own personal contact me bot, when the bot opens up, it says, if you have a couple of minutes, I can help you set up an appointment with Arnav. And then it gives them 2 options. One option is schedule an appointment, and the other one is show me a cat GIF. Now, the show me a cat GIF is just there for fun. It's just there to make the user laugh. And when they do laugh, they might feel a little bit more willing to share their lead information with me because we've broken the ice. And the way I make that functionality work is essentially when they say, show me a cat GIF, I do an API integration with the GIPHY API, and I look up cat GIFs, and I show the top result, just like we did over here.
That is like one of the most, I don't know, it's like one of the most fun, or not fun, but one of the most unnecessary features that we might want to use. But I think the power of the API integration allows you to connect to any application that you might be using in your organization, or any API that you have for your own custom backend. So basically, As I mentioned in the earlier at the beginning of the webinar as well, that when we made this platform, we actually we didn't want to make something which is already out there. We wanted to in fact work with all the systems that is already out there. They are really great applications. People are building really great software and applications, and we want to basically connect to those systems and make a cohesive experience. So as Arnav was saying as well in one of the slides, uh, when it comes to what is the purpose of doing all of this, basically it's all about putting everything, all the services and all the offering that you have as part of your organization that you want to give to your customers or your users. The problem usually happens is putting it everything together. So a chatbot which is capable of doing these kind of integrations, I think is the most perfect way to uh, bringing all those services in a very cohesive and a very congruent fashion and deliver it to the users. And using this such system, you're basically connecting all the services that you have on your backend as part of your organization. You are connecting it to the use directly to the user over this seamless interface. So there's no need for a human intervention. There is no need for a person to connect people to services or map people to systems. You can actually do all of this over this chatbot-like interface.
With that, we are actually coming up to about an hour, and we finished with the live build. So for the people who need to head out, because you guys have better things to do, you guys should totally do that. Vineet and I will stay on this call for a little bit in case you guys have some questions that you need answered, and we'd be more than happy to answer them for you. That's pretty much it. Thank you guys for joining this webinar. Since we're hosting 3 webinars this week, we are going to be sending out all the recordings to all 3 webinars at the same time at the end of the week. In case you guys missed it, oh, I need to stop touching my face. It's super hard. In case you guys missed it, we're having another webinar later this week on Friday, where we're going to be looking at what features are coming to the TARS Builder this spring. So if you're interested in learning, if you've been using the TARS Builder and you're interested in having your input heard about what features we should build out in a direct setting where there's other people around, you should totally join that webinar. We will give you the opportunity to contribute. Vineet and I, again, will be here. We'll be in conversation, and we'll be talking about the integrations that are coming out and the integrations that we want to eventually build out.
Yeah, one more thing so after seeing this webinar, if you have any ideas about uh, connecting your task chatbot with any other application that you use, or even the application that you think that you might want to use, and you don't know where to start, or you feel confused, just reach out to us on the live chat or on the dashboard. Within the dashboard, we have the Intercom live chat available. You can just ping us and you can ask us, okay, I need some help. I have this idea about connecting my system to my task chatbot, and we'll basically try to help you on it.
Right. Actually, really quick, Vineet, since you have the builder open, why don't you show them the Intercom widget where they can reach out to us directly?
Sure. So you can actually see this right here. So with this Intercom widget, you can actually start a new conversation with any of us. You can say hi, and you can just type in your question, or we'll reach out to you. So yeah, you can actually find, or you can also search for some of the articles that we have already in place. But if you want to directly talk to one of us, you just say hi here, and we will respond.
Yep. All right, guys. It seems like we don't have any questions in this session. That's completely all right. So I
We
think
have
we'll
one
close up.
question.
Oh, we actually did get one. Ah, amazing. In your experience, do you know if there is a wiki or list of API services? Actually, we do know if that exists.
Rapid API.
Rapid API. Should we pull that up on the screen?
Yeah, you want me to pull it?
Yep.
One sec. So there is a service called Rapid API, which is like an aggregator of all the APIs. It's like an API marketplace. Similar to that, there is programmable web APIs. These are pretty old uh, aggregators, and you can find a lot of interesting APIs. In fact, I think I found the meme generator API in one of these aggregators. So we have another bot called meme generator chatbot, which also uses an API to generate memes through a chatbot. So you can actually find the list of APIs here. So this one is loading. You can see this API directory, and within this, you can see there's a Google Maps API, YouTube API, Twitter API, Flickr API, Facebook. Like these are the like heavy lifters. You can actually connect with Twilio's API to send SMS. You can connect to Facebook API to, I don't know what Facebook can do, but you can connect to API, YouTube API to search for videos. You can do Twitter API to post tweets or retweets. You can use Google Maps API to uh, look up an address based on latitude, longitude. You can do a bunch of things actually.
Glad we could help. The person who asked this question said I couldn't find the magical Google search string to find those API directories. So
Similar to that, there's a Rapid API as well. This is also has a bunch of stuff. This is Weather API. There's no, there's no end to it.
deep object recognition, we should try that out in a bot, in a demo bot. We should maybe do a webinar around
Yep.
where you can accept an image through the chatbot and then send it to a deep image recognition bot to understand what's there. Send it back.
You can look for how many cats are there in the image.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. Thank you guys for joining us on this session. It's always a pleasure for us to host these for you guys and share knowledge about the chatbot space. If you guys want to reach out to us after this webinar is done, as Vineet said, you can use the Intercom widget within the builder, or what you could do is you can reach out to us through any of these channels. So our phone number listed over here, give us a call anytime. We should pick up. You can go to our website, hellotars.com. You can find out more information. You can see more webinars like this. We have all the recordings to all our previous webinars up on the website. I highly recommend you take a look at the Zapier webinar where we show you guys how you can use the Zapier integration. Zapier is basically a much easier way to interact with these APIs that we're talking about. It makes it very visual, so you don't have to deal with those unwieldy data structures that Vineet was showing you earlier. We also have a Google Calendar appointment booking chatbot API using our native Google Calendar integration. That again uses APIs in it. So definitely go to our website and check it out. You can also reach out to me directly by email. My email is arnav@hellotars.com. Similarly, Vineet's email is just vineet@hellotars.com. So reach out to us over there. Thank you guys for attending. We'll send you guys the recording to this webinar at the end